All right. So let me back up a little bit there. This is CS-Sensei September 4th. Everybody knows what next Saturday is, right? 9/11. We talk about attacks. Not all attacks are using airplanes, obviously. So sometimes they can be as devastating, if not more so, just through cyber attacks. I think the main takeaway is that the cybersecurity workforce is truly on the front line, even though you may not feel like it. You know, you can't smell the gunpowder and hear the explosions next to you like somebody who's in infantry in the Army. But this is just as valuable and just as critical to our way of life. I think it's important for us to understand the seriousness of this job, what we do, and why it's so valuable. I mean, I don't do this because it's entertaining for me. I do this because I want to make sure that we all have secure bank accounts and we all have secure emails, and my retirement funds aren't going to get swiped by somebody in the dead of night just before I retire, and I end up eating tuna out of a can for the rest of my life. You know, I have my motives are to help make sure that our way of living is not disrupted, not interrupted by somebody and their own selfish interests. So that's just my own little thing. Anybody have anything before we move on? Any discussion?
Well, I just wanted to second on your statement that the world has changed dramatically in every sector that we look at it. Health-wise, it's down the drain. Security-wise, cybersecurity, very, very touchy-feely. So the life has changed. We are in middle of the history. One day we would say, oh God, yeah, I lived through that period, for example. Right. But it is a different life. Totally, it is a different era, especially for me that I'm old, I remember very well 9/11. I was in the office for the state, and I think it was like 10, 11 in the morning, that it was Eastern time, that all of a sudden everybody says, go get the TV, and we had a couple of TVs in our boss's room. And when we watched it, without my control, I sat down. It was that devastating. And of course, they sent us home. From that moment, everything changed. We all had security systems to get into the building, so on and so forth. You name it. All over the world changed from this part of security, this entrance of who is coming in. And, I remember every bit of it. But what I'm saying that it's such a sad day. When you said it is, I was just thinking, what a sad day. What a sad memory. What a sad memory that we've been through these things. And I was an adult, and now I am a tad older. Just a tad.
Just a tad.
But what I'm saying is just a tad. But what I'm saying that is, we are living in the history. We are living in the middle of the history. We were just going to get over the 9/11 impact because it was a worldwide impact, and then boom, we got Corona.
Yeah.
And here we are. The life has changed.
Yep.
So I'm all ears listening to you and enjoying everything.
Yep.
Scotty, the statement that hit me hard was not all attacks are airplanes. And I seem to remember listening to a news report when Osama bin Laden was still alive, and he would have TVs connected, and he would always have it on CNN or some news channel, and there would be victory cries and victory yells when a disaster occurred in the U.S.
Yes.
And I look at Hurricane Ida right now, and I'm sure our enemies are going, yes, and going, hey, death to America, even if Allah or God or whoever their makers are,
right?
They sent that hurricane to kill Americans,
sure.
to make Americans' lives horrible. And yeah, that statement, not all attacks are airplanes, that's making me think and making my mind churn about security. And it hits the objectives of the Security Plus, like what do you do with a disaster recovery? First question that came out in my head, and I want to always ask is, hey, a Category 3 and plus hurricane hits your company. What is the first thing that should come up when you want to get back to normalcy? And I see that in the United States, everybody wants to focus on availability when they don't realize that confidentiality and integrity is just as important.
Right. Sometimes they presume confidentiality and integrity, but availability is so easy to think about. You know, somebody turns off the switch, it's not available anymore. You know, so that is kind of an easy sell for many C-level executives.
One of the things I notice in Americans is we want something available, and when a disaster hits, we want food, gas, water, our four walls back as soon as possible. Yeah. And I just listened to a news story that said the people in New Orleans are not going to get their power back till middle of this week. And that was in the week beforehand they said 2 weeks, and they're crying for help.
Right. Yeah. Well, there are. That's fine. No, I mean, this is good lead-up stuff. There are lots of scenarios, and I think one of the things that we need to do within this industry is periodically review the scenarios and say, you know, are we, you know, this goes to that risk analysis thing that I keep referring to. What is the likelihood that this is going to happen, and what would be the result if it did? So you always weigh those two in light of any perceived risk. But I often joke about this, and I think you guys both remember because I've shared it before, but I was in the Pentagon on 9/11. I was Donald Rumsfeld's IT program manager at the time. So, you know, when he went on TV and said, we're going to be back tomorrow, back at work tomorrow, that was me. So when we see things like this, you have to examine the broader concept of risk, you know, because somebody's actions over in XYZ country could change your risk analysis. And this is part of the President's Commission on Critical Infrastructure Protection back in the late 1990s. In their report, they noted that the United States had enjoyed, you know, 200 years of geographic isolation and pretty likable neighbors north and south of us. You know, in other words, there was very little fear of an out-and-out invasion, because they'd have to come across the oceans or they'd have to come through Canada or Mexico. So we sort of enjoyed this insulation until the advent of the internet and interconnected networks. And now any attacker from anywhere in the world can touch your computer. And therefore, those geographic boundaries no longer exist. And that's what a lot of people have trouble with. You know, it wasn't a big deal 50 years ago. Why is it a big deal now? Well, it's because of the internet, the greater connectivity, and we'll sort of get into this, but our increasing reliance on network systems. You know, so anyway, let's move on. Let's go to the agriculture sector warning, and sort of talk about, you know, what's the big deal with the agriculture sector and why now. So here's what I got from, I forget who it was. I think it was Bleeping Computer. But it says the FBI has issued a new alert warning companies in the food and agriculture sector that they are increasingly at risk of ransomware as their corporate attack surface expands. Now that actually answers the question of why, honestly, if you think about it. So let's sort of talk through this a little bit. This is the wording from or part of the warning. It says ransomware may impact businesses across the sector, from small farms to large producers, processors and manufacturers, and markets and restaurants. Cyber criminal threat actors exploit network vulnerabilities to exfiltrate data and encrypt systems in a sector that is increasingly reliant on smart technologies, industrial control systems, and internet-based automation systems. Now that's a mouthful, but basically what it's saying is because various sectors, and you sort of start off with, well, many of the industrial control systems have long been targets. Then we got to things like, you know, emergency services, like, you know, electricity and water and nuclear power. Now we're getting down to consumer type industries. And this is getting closer and closer to where we live. There's one that you don't really see yet, and I tend to believe that the threat is bigger than we see, and that is in the banking and financial services industries. And I can sort of, you know, speculate why that is. If any of you have ever read about the Fdic and the national, what's it called, the Federal Reserve, that they will help you understand a little bit more about why the banking industry, we don't hear as much about it in the news as we do about other things like agricultural industries.
Isn't it because they have the best filters, or whatever we call it, security system? Because we're talking about money and people's assets. Generally speaking, the banks have always been, you know, like when I go to check my account on internet, it wants me to go through two separate, two-step verification, and then as soon as I change my computer myself, ton of questions are going to come up, and so on and so forth. But it's good. So it's good that they have been secure. So I'm surprised that you are bringing up the banking system.
Well, I think that's a topic for a future week webinar. But do yourself a favor and. Well, I mean, you learn this a lot from Chris Noggle and the Money Multiplier team. If you go out and read about the purpose of the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, it's quite interesting. I studied the FDIC. I actually was part of a bid for enterprise IT services in support of the FDIC. So we've done a lot of good study about FDIC. Maybe we'll do a full Saturday session on the FDIC. But it is your supposition, your question about don't they have the best because they have the money. I think that is a reasonable assumption, but I don't think it's particularly true. And we can talk about that. The purpose of the FDIC, in short, is to maintain Americans' confidence in the banking system. So, if news about banks getting hijacked gets out, the FDIC has not done its job. To give you an idea.
I see. You say that they have made a blanket protection with the name of FDIC in order to keep the consumers kind of sort of have a peace of mind, but in reality it's not.
Well, you have to ask yourself, what are the goals of that whole FDIC? And again, I think we'll talk about it. I think it deserves talking about just from an cybersecurity standpoint, to understand the mission of your employer, of your possible future employer. And the FDIC is no different. Okay, so let's go back to the agriculture industry here. And sort of I've got about 3 slides, and then we can sort of talk about it. It says attacks may target larger organizations deemed more likely to pay higher ransom demands and smaller firms perceived as softer targets. Now there's where you get into the money discussion, Farsane. Softer targets are typically the ones that can't invest large amounts to protect themselves. But that doesn't mean that the larger, more heavily financed targets are immune to those types of attacks. That is not a proper assumption, because if that were the case, then DOD, which literally has a blank check, should never have any attacks, but that is not the case, So anyway, it says for both the smaller and larger targets, the increasing move to IoT, which is Internet of Things, may offer a new attack surface to target, the FBI warned. According to a private industry report, cyber actors may gradually broaden their attack from just IT and business processes to also include the operational technology assets, or OT assets, which monitor and control physical processes impacting industrial production regardless of whether the malware was deployed in IT or OT systems. Now, let me give you an example of that. Imagine us, the U.S. agriculture industry, coming up with a new way to monitor and manage things like refrigerated freight systems nationwide. Let's say I'm a freight carrier and I've come up with a brand new means of making sure that refrigerated freight is monitored and managed so that the temperature remains constant nationwide for, let's say, all of the lettuce that I'm shipping nationwide, millions of dollars worth of lettuce. But I can help manage all of the trucks and the trains that are carrying this through the use of this new internet-connected system. Well, what happens if the system is compromised and somebody dials up the temperature, 10 degrees, 20 degrees? Nationwide, the entire lettuce crop would perish. One move by one attacker on one particular system, but that system is a control system for such a large portion of the industry, the attack would be disastrous. So be thinking about it that way. These IoT systems seem to be oh so convenient, and they are so helpful to allow you to do things, like manage the storage temperature of your storage warehouses, for example. But what if somebody gets into them? Remember, IoT doesn't necessarily mean a system that is perpetually being upgraded and patched. And as we all know about zero-day exploits, well, the Microsoft Print server vulnerability. Does anybody know how long that's been out? Chris, do you remember hearing about that?
I believe it's been out for a while.
I'm Farzaneh.
Hello, Farzaneh. So do you remember how long the Microsoft Print vulnerability
I couldn't hear you. I got lost.
Okay.
Because I came to my PC, and my PC has the camera on it and everything. And then the other tablet that I'm always on, just, you know, I didn't want to say that this one is much better until I cleaned the other one.
Okay.
So I was in the middle that you said, if I am a company that delivers the goods and I'm refrigerated, and then after that I couldn't know anything. Okay. So repeat for me, please.
Sure. I was talking about, and I was just sort of giving a hypothetical here, in reference to a nationwide shipper of something like an agricultural product like lettuce. And I said, if you come up with this new nationwide means to monitor and manage the temperature, the shipping temperature of your containers. Let's say your shipping containers on trucks, on trains, whatever. You put GPS units on them and this little control thing. These suddenly become IoT-enabled systems that are capable of being infiltrated and attacked. So the IoT seems to be incredibly helpful, but it also, like it says here in this thing from the FBI, it increases the attack surface for your industry, because now people could get in across the internet to such things as unpatched systems and dial up the temperature of all of your storage units and destroy your crop in one motion. One activity could destroy the entire nationwide, in this case, lettuce crop. One person. So that's what I'm saying about increasing, like it says, the increased attack surface, because the IoT is so interesting and seems to be so helpful. A lot of people are pushing to incorporate it without sufficient security controls. So somebody says, we've got the greatest thing out there, and they don't take the time to protect it. They could literally be setting themselves up for an industry-wide disaster.
Scotty?
Yes, sir.
I found out that Microsoft publicly released that vulnerability, the print vulnerability,
right,
in July 1st. Now, knowing what I know about Microsoft, they probably knew about it way before then.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it was literally a 0-day.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it already existed in Microsoft desktop operating systems. Do you remember how long somebody went back and researched how long it's been there?
I believe that it went back to the legacy Windows 7, if I'm not mistaken.
14 years. 14 years it's been out there. Or at least that's what somebody speculated.
Mm-hmm.
So the important thing to remember is even if this is a brand spanking new IoT device, whatever the device is, and they say, well, this is going to, revolutionize the vacuum packing industry that cans food, whatever it is, that device, whatever it uses in the form of IoT technology to interconnect with all the other canneries or shipping companies or whatever, makes it possibly vulnerable because, like it says, an attack surface. Let's talk about attack surface. And I don't have my textbook with me, but an attack surface is every area. When you combine them, every area that is possible, not likely, but possible to be attacked. Okay? So, for example, if I owned a warehouse and I had 4 entry doors to that warehouse, my attack surface would be all 4 of those doors. If I were to permanently close 2 of those doors, my attack surface would have been reduced by 50%. Okay? Attack surface is merely where someone could attack. So because people are considering going out to the IoT and including that as part of their operational technologies, that increases their attack surface because they weren't out there before. Okay, that's what they're referring to, and that's why the FBI is issuing this warning. They're basically saying you have to consider, because you are now looking at IoT capabilities for your production, your storage, your transport, your sales, your point of sales, your shipping and receiving, your accounts payable, whatever, because they are now being increasingly placed out on the internet. Number 1 is cloud, number 2 is IoT. Both of those are increasing your attack surface. Make sense?
Here's the interesting part, Scotty, about the cloud. Yeah. They market big time saying we are secure. And
yes, they do.
What you don't realize until you read the documentation is, yes, they are secure to a point. They do shared models, whereas they have control of certain aspects of security, but you're responsible for the other end of security. And they make it very clear in the documentation that, yes, we're a secure platform, but only to certain parts of the platform. Mm-hmm. If you decide to spin up a virtual machine with an operating system, you need to secure that operating system yourself. We don't secure that operating system. That's your responsibility. So it's a shared responsibility model.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Here's a great example. Have you seen all of the recent ads for your local dentist's office? What do they say? Do they say you won't get the coronavirus if you come to get your teeth drilled here? No. They say we follow the CDC guidelines. In other words, the CDC has published guidelines for health, recommendations, and then these people say we follow those guidelines. They are not saying that you're not going to get COVID if you go get your teeth drilled there. What they're saying is they publish industry guidelines, we follow those guidelines. That's about the best promise that you can get from them. And same thing in, like you were saying, in the cyber industry, there are models. I'm gonna do some acronyms. Sorry about that, but any FedRAMP approved software application or service or system, in order to be what's called FedRAMP approved, it has to meet NIST 35 or whatever it is, and which also references FIPS 140-2. So it basically says, here's what you should be doing, and then FedRAMP says, are you doing it? And if an industry comes back and says, yes, we are doing it with this particular product, that product becomes FedRAMP certified. And you can sell it to the federal government agencies. Mm-hmm. If something is not FedRAMP certified, here's the advantage of the federal government over industry. In the industry, you could have your CEO, and I've told you about this with the Secretary of Defense a number of years ago, but your CEO looks around on their, tablet and they're looking at something, they go, ooh, we want that. Why? Because, oh, look at this pretty ad, and they say how good they are and whatever. In the federal government, they stipulate that in order to purchase particular things, they have to have certain levels of certification, and they have to go through the process to achieve that certification, or else you can't buy them. You cannot contract that service, regardless of what they say in their ads. It doesn't matter. So in the industry, you don't have that, but the industry probably should pay very close attention to anybody who doesn't have those certifications and say why. Somebody doesn't have, if they're not FedRAMP certified, why is it that you're not FedRAMP certified? Because FedRAMP specifies the controls and procedures, minimum necessary controls and procedures in order to sell to the federal government. It's not wonderful, it's not beautiful, but it's better than an advertiser telling you what they do. Yes?
If I may, if imaginary agriculture system wants to do same as the Fed's security, it means everything would cost way more.
There you go. That's the balance. It's always a balance. You are absolutely correct, and that is the tug of war that if you were in the cybersecurity field and you were supporting a particular organization, that would be your challenge. Remember, we talked about this, putting cybersecurity in a business context and put it in reference to business risk. You can't say, IT features, ooh, look, this is a nice blue interface, and ooh, look, this will go all over the place, and, it'll secure all of our systems or whatever. You have, and oh, by the way, it's $6 million to buy it. You have to put it all in reference to the business risk of not doing this. So that's why you always have to go back to the risk model, and that if you are studying for your Security Plus, it is in Chapter 1 of your study guide. It talks about risk. If you can't talk in terms of risk, you are automatically facing a discontinuity between the language you speak and what your C-level executives are thinking. You've got to reach their level. You've got to be able to talk to them about the bottom line.
Scotty, Objective 5.4 on the Security Plus, summarize risk management processes and concepts.
Yep.
But from a consumer point of view, that means everything is going to be way more expensive if we are supposed to do everything with that cybersecurity protection. So this is not an easy task to, although they're working, and I have first-hand knowledge of one of the, what is it? It's a warehouse of food products, something that is almost nobody cares what it is. They were hacked, and they wanted it Bitcoin, and it was exactly the same time that they the railroad, whatever the that thing that the gas line was attacked.
Right.
And these people, they said, no, we won't pay. We're gonna fix it ourselves. It took them about 10 days, bringing in 10 or more people, 24 hours to update the system, because they had to just enter in orders and something like that. Not a big deal. And I'm thinking, these people were not attacked from outside of U.S. They don't have international enemies.
Right.
I think somebody is next door neighbor.
Right.
Because when we are talking about the crime, they're always saying the first person that is your possible suspect is the person who knows the victim and surrounding people around the victim.
Yep, the insider threat, as it's called. Yep. That's very insightful. You never know where the attack is coming from. It could be the people that provide your bagels in the morning. You just don't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was my point, that we are under assumption that it is a foreign, it's the Russian, which they are. But who knew about that little tiny warehouse in the middle of nowhere, a city that nobody even can pronounce their name, in middle of nowhere with like maybe total of 20 employees. So it must be somebody who knows them.
I would say that is a possibility. One other consideration is that smaller targets are considered to be targets of opportunity, and therefore, if I'm preparing to unleash an attack on a major entity, let's say, I don't know, SC Johnson and Company, and I want to make sure that what I'm working on, what I've developed is going to be effective, maybe I'll start with some little town in Atlanta, Georgia or something, and see if it is effective. And if so, then I can translate this as my exercise for the bigger one, the big fish, where I'm going to make enough money to set myself up for life. So, like it said in a previous slide, the bigger industries are more lucrative. The smaller industries are considered to be more easily compromised. So, you can think of it as a possible training ground for the big guys.
Right, exercise ground, exactly.
Yeah. Scotty, if they're just criminals out for money, like that small town in New Hampshire, even 1.2 million is the figure I read, or 5.4 million, that's still a significant amount of money for a criminal whose interest is money. Versus if that's a soft target and that's a small target that I'm going to get 5.4 million and I just go walk away, put it in cryptocurrency and be done with it, that's something that would be a great soft target to do, the low-hanging fruit, as they would say.
Right.
Give me 5.4 million. I put it in the cryptocurrency. I go retire out in Ireland somewhere in the middle of some ocean, and I don't have to touch a computer ever again unless I want to.
Right. Yeah. I think it's fair to say that people work on increasingly larger hits. It's like nobody goes straight to the Olympics. You learn to be good locally, then you learn to be good regionally, then you learn to be good nationally, then you hit the international target and go for the gold medal. So,
of course, I see your point. That you got to start from zero and then win your little local area and then keep going on and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last slide for the agriculture discussion says, as with all ransomware victims, those in the food and agricultural sector would suffer lost productivity. And these are sort of things to keep in mind when you're talking about business risk to your potential employers: lost productivity, theft of proprietary and personal information, and reputational and financial damage. Any or all of those, can be couched in the form of, can we afford to be hit in this particular area? And that's part of your discussion about the risk, and therefore the reason why investment in cyber defenses is so important. So next one, just a quick one: weekend and holiday attacks. I don't know if you saw this. The FBI and CISA warned, as the U.S. Labor Day holiday approaches this weekend, that holidays have commonly been occasions for heightened rates of cyber attack. Do you guys agree or disagree?
I agree. Do you all remember the Atlanta Olympics attack when they were all gathered somewhere? So that means it was just when people are gathered in a place, they got attacked. It wasn't, I don't know, it was cyber, it was whatever. It was somebody who had a bomb or whatever. Always when there is a group that they go to a stadium, they go to, wherever that there are several thousands of people, there is a big risk, always.
Uh-huh. Gotti, I'll tentatively agree, and the only reason why I'm tentatively agreeing, the agreement part is all the SOC is Security Operations Centers and Network Operations Centers will have shortened staff, so less people watching the fort. But I feel there's a trick coming up, and I want to know what that trick is, and I have no clue what that trick could. Oh, it's not a trick.
Not a trick. Nope, not a trick. Not a trick question. I'm just putting this forward as a discussion item because a lot of people may have in their minds that cybersecurity is a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I purchase systems, I set up systems, I make sure systems are operational, I get staff to monitor and manage these systems, and then I can go home and sleep well at night. And what the FBI and the CISA are basically saying is, well, think about it.
Mm-hmm.
There are, we've heard about white hats and black hats, right? Everybody, I think, hopefully everybody understands that. But then there's, okay, a white hat are people who are doing IT, cybersecurity for the purposes of preserving their particular organization or industry or whatever. White hats work for the people that need to be protected. Black hats are out there to attack those people as opportunities. They are literally out there to do illegal things, illegal, immoral, unethical things for their own personal gain. Those are black hats. But then right in the middle of it, there's a group of people that they've nicknamed gray hats. And they could be people who are white hats by day, but play around at night. Hey, there's this new tool. Oh, wow, that sounds really cool. If I figure out how to do that tool, it's going to make me better for what I do in the daytime, but if I get really good at it, then I can quit my day job and be a black hat. Seriously, that's what goes through the minds of some of these people who don't have that ethical, moral boundary about why they're doing something.
Criminal. That's a criminal standard.
Someone who can be convinced to be a criminal. Yeah, that's correct. So if you think about this weekend holiday type thing, the people who are Monday to Friday white hats could be out there trying stuff on weekends. So the possibility of more of these things occurring, I think that's a feasible thought. The Monday to Friday white hats who are really gray hats are playing around on weekends. They can't do it in the daytime because they're working. So they use nights and weekends and holidays to try out their new junk that they've played around with.
But I have a question.
Sure.
I have been working for the state of Florida, in a kind of sort of in a key job, and our weekends was also our computers. I mean, they weren't and I'm from a little bit older days. They weren't directly attached to them. But if you wanted it to download just something, for example, like the main page, and just get some of the general information, we were able to. So therefore, what I'm talking about is that we were not kind of sort of free on weekend to go and, I don't know, to go out of town and find a computer and play with it and become a black hat. There was no such thing. Although I do understand your point very well, that there are people who are criminal potentially. Nobody can touch that.
Right.
And they already, on the other hand, I was a person who always could put herself in the place of a criminal person and get their next action, their next step. But I was never a criminal myself.
Sure.
Because for 10 years of my job, I was a criminal investigator.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge part of it. Longer story short, I'm saying that how come I can work for cybersecurity imaginary during the 5 to 9 and then go home and become a black hand cybersecurity? How?
Your point is well taken, and I would like to think that the vast majority of people who are in the cyber industry are doing it for all the right reasons. I would like to think that.
Right. I got you.
But it's just like the banking industry. You know, there are insiders, and
always.
You know, one or two insiders are enough to make an impact, a negative impact in the industry. Chris, go ahead.
Just a theory here. A lot of security practitioners do what's called home labbing. And when they do a home lab...
what? I'm sorry, home what? Home landing?
Home lab. They create their own home labs. They'll simulate a enterprise structure in their own home.
Okay.
And they'll go into things that they probably ought not, or they forgot the part of, hey, I need to be in an agreement with company A in order to try pen testing, for example.
Right.
They forget that part of you have to have a written agreement saying what you're going to do, and make sure that there's what kind of attack it's going to be. Is it going to be what's called a black box attack, where we have no clue what the system is and we're just going to hit the box or hit the computer system as much as we can, or is it going to be a white box attack? We know it's coming. We just want to test our defenses to make sure it's A-okay.
Right.
I think they forget that part, and the moral part I agree with. It's the gray hat area is probably it is immoral to go approach that, but at the same time it's quite easy to fall into, because in order to be a good white hat, I'll quote Sun Tzu's Art of War, know your enemy. Yep. And they will go into that black hat mindset. And if they cross one line of that black hat mindset, it's over. You're done. You just did bad and horrible things. You're a criminal. And I can see how easy it is to fall into the black hat area. So they could be in the mindset of, I'm not doing anything bad, I'm just trying to learn how the black hats work, but completely forget that, hey, you need to be in agreement with this company in order to do this pen testing. Mm-hmm. Scotty, 1.5 in the objectives talk about different categories of hackers, and Farsney too. Script Kiddie, nation state, insider threat, and we've been talking about insider threat a lot. And I honestly believe that sometimes when you're just playing around and you click something and you end up doing something you didn't think to do, but you did. That happens in system administration a lot. You have a system administrator who changes a control, and all of a sudden, boom, the whole network goes down. And all they did was change the one thing they thought was going to do good for the whole system, but wrong. It makes importance that change management and control of what you're doing is very important. And that's my soapbox opinion about that. So it's quite easy to fall into that trap of, hey, I'm doing good, I'm trying to learn the black hat arts, but where's that once you cross that line, it's over. Where's the dividing line?
Christopher, remember, you are bringing in the theory of double spy. And in today's world, we have triple spy. Not only working for this, for my own company, also for the enemy's company. That's double spy.
Theoretical textbook, yes, I'm bringing that in. But when someone's doing this on the computer, that's not their thought process. Never was their thought process. That's criminals,
of course. And also there is another written rule. If something happens to our computer system, meaning we are the company of Sensei, okay? And something happens to it, the first people who are going to get affected are people who know about this, who know how to run it, who know how to be a member of it, who are online and talking in like you, me, and Scotty. These are the first suspects. I mean, no doubt. But I do understand that there is a possibility because criminals, they would do everything. They would sell their child, you know, whatever. You can't imagine. They would kill. Who was this new guy? The latest thing, the guy killed the wife, and then he dropped 2 little girls into the huge oil facility. You also remember? I mean, how could somebody be so criminal? How could you be so criminal? Go kill yourself versus all of these people. What kind of animal are you?
That's starting from the point of criminal, though. These guys and gals are not starting from the point of criminal. All they're doing is thinking.
Well, they're criminals. No. They are criminals. No, they are criminals. When somebody steps on the line, they are criminals.
As soon as you commit the crime,
you are a criminal. I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. But they're going into it without that thought process of, oh, I'm just doing good here. But I agree. Once you cross that line, you are that criminal.
And if you don't have that ethical force inside of you, that I'm going to just go and play with this. It's not a game. You are here sworn. Go with the right hand. You are sworn. You have put all of your credibility. If you do something, even if you make this small, how come we always have editors and monitors and think that they work on our work, and then more work in CIA, if I'm not mistaken. That was one of the jobs that I was supposed to have. If I would imaginary, I would listen to a conversation and translate it. 9 other people would review it.
I'll put a challenge on you, Farsane. If I go 56 miles per hour in a 55 zone, am I a criminal?
No, you're taking the risk of getting a ticket.
I believe it's the same case as a gray hat hacker. If you are doing these things, you're taking the risk of becoming a criminal. I'm just going to leave it as that.
You remember back in I think it was the 1980s, there was that TV show called It Takes a Thief to Catch a Thief?
Right, right.
I think it's important for us to recognize that it's valuable for people in the cyber industry to think how an attacker would think, so that you can be a step ahead of them, and you can configure your systems and your shifts and your training and all those sorts of things to provide the maximum capability to defend against those things. But like Chris was saying, it is possible to do what's called a lab and do all of your testing inside that lab. That is the appropriate way to do it, but that takes a lot of work, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm, it does.
So a lot of people would say, oh, yeah, I understand. I'm supposed to be doing it this way, but, I got this spare PC over here, so let me just try and crack into that PC and, et cetera, et cetera.
You can also nmap a IP address that you think it belongs to you, and in reality, you nmap a address that doesn't belong to you. And Scotty, if I remember correctly, if you nmap a IP address, it's considered an act of war, if I'm not mistaken, from my lessons learned here.
Right?
I
don't know for sure.
You don't know for sure, but we've talked about this before. It's there's some companies and some agencies where if you nmap their system, they consider it you're attacking our system because you're performing what's called reconnaissance. And
yep. So we're out of time. I appreciate this discussion. This is a good one, and it's one that I hope that we can share with others afterwards, because this gets down to, and I sort of talked about this over the course of the year and a half, almost 2 years now that we've been doing this. We do this because I want us to breed white hats. I want us to put together teams of people who have an ethical boundary that is in place, so that I'm not training people who are going to be going out and becoming, the next person to hack, Heinz ketchup. I don't want that. Mm-hmm. I want our people to understand that the value in this is to be within the industry as a defender, as somebody who supports, as somebody whose banking policy, whatever you've got, is safe because of your actions.
That's capable and committed.
That's what, to being white hats. And if it takes a lot of work to put together that lab, like Chris was saying, then that's what I'm going to do, because it's worth it to me. I do not consider shortcuts because they take too long and sort of lean into that gray area for ethical behavior. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So in the long run, it is important for us to understand that the white hats are where we want to be. That's what we want to present ourselves as, and to learn ethically to be based in the white hat area. Even if we talk about these other things, that doesn't mean we participate in them in that fashion. So
I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks, everybody. I put something in the chat. I hope you guys can see it. That is the link for the BBC article titled "The Lazarus Heist." It is a long read, and I'm sorry it's full of ads and stuff, but it talks about weekend and holiday and how these people coordinated across multiple continents to maximize the value of the weekend and the holiday for their benefit. So it makes a lot of sense to look in that and go, holy smokes, somebody was thinking about this for a long time. I think they said that they were planning this for like 4 years. And it was one small discrepancy that somebody noticed that was enough to stop them. Otherwise, this would have been a billion-dollar steal. Billion-dollar. So it's well worth going and taking a look at.
If I may, I know that our time is almost over time. I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit controversial, whatever I'm going to say. Do we know that Hollywood plays a huge role? For example, they have come up with all kinds of terrorism, but in a very fancy way. Mr. George Clooney and Brad Pitt, they are going to go and rob a big casino in what is it, Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. They are making it so fancy, so delicious that you would think, oh, wow. They are teaching people how to do it. And million other things, if you look at it, because Hollywood, first of all, many people who, leave CIA, FBI, SAA, and so on, they go and work for Hollywood, especially if they are a little bit talented in writing or just, and they're using them in the best way, and they are making movies that they are kind of sort of futuristic. But guess what? Later on, you're going to see them that they become reality. Mm-hmm. For example, all of these cybersecurity problems, I can't call it cybersecurity, all of these hackings that people, they have learned how to do it, or boom, zoom, and they're doing it. So,
mm-hmm. No, you're right.
But it's so interesting. You are, I wish if I knew since a year and a half ago, and I would have, I just love it.
Well, thank you. This is something that I do to try and help make sure that there are enough new entries into the cyber field that we can make sure that we are not critically short on resources. That's all I'm trying to do with these mentorships.
Also, you are preparing, for example, somebody like me to be a recruiter, to be a teacher, to be a trainer, to be whatever. If I don't work 5 to 9, or maybe I'm actually really good to stay up all night. So, and I know that you get up at 2:30, everybody just teases you. Yeah, God made me to work at night shift. Mm-hmm. But I've been working so hard to put myself in a daytime pattern. Yep. And I don't know, Christopher, I just wanted to let you know that in some ways, it was my job that I was trained, not that I had it just in my talent, although talent and integrity and so on plays a big role. I was the one who could think like a criminal and guess their next action.
Yes.
And these people are very critical. They use them for, or if somebody is there, they're taking some hostages somewhere, and they think that, you know, what they gonna do, what they gonna do next.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I just believe it's just an easy trap to fall into. And you could be just typing on your computer and thinking you're doing great, learning something new about security, but in reality, you're doing something 100% completely illegal.
As long as you have that mindset that it doesn't matter that, you know, if you cross the line. Mm-hmm. For some people, they never cross the line. Zip, zoom. Yeah. I mean,
once I realize I crossed the line, clam up and go, I did it. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I will not do it again.
Yeah. Human error. Always in office, you know, human error. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, guys. I'm going to finish up and end our recording, but thank you for your participation today. Very
I haven't forgotten what you wanted from me to send you information about intermittent fasting and autophagy. I've been so busy, bombarded, but I'm going to do it ASAP.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, everybody.